developed from the jet Provost. The JP, as it was known itself, a very significant part of RAF history. The idea was to make RAF training spell the Strikemaster and the jet Provost. Introduced a number of significant enhancements to make it a more effective and more complex frontline aircraft, but it was still suitable as an advanced jet trainer in itself. The JP airframe was strengthened to produce the Strikemaster. It was given more in the way of armour protection, an uprated Viper engine once again, and of course underwing hardpoints for weapons. Now they've switched into line astern formation. The Royal Saudi Air Force was the first to use the Strikemaster between 1968 and 77. Deliveries to that Air Force took place initially. And it was a type that for quite a long time, despite being built in Britain, was not a familiar sight at all in British skies because they were all sold abroad. The list of customers, apart from the Saudis, included South Yemen, Oman, Kuwait, Botswana, Singapore, Kenya, New Zealand, Ecuador and Sudan. And several of those, Ecuador, South Yemen and particularly Oman, took these aircraft to war. Coming back into us for a manoeuvre they call the slider. We'll see them changing formation during this sequence. There they go, initially into line astern. Before the JP resumes the echelon position of the Strikemaster.
Yeah, left and right now. Just to catch you up, not port and starboard as it used to be in the old days. Countless generations will have flown, of course, T5, you mentioned the JP3, units in service of the Air Force for a huge amount of time, and relatively straightforward, very benign aircraft to fly actually, and I often think back and found the Chipmunk infinitely more difficult than flying a JP3. It really was a superstar to a flying career.
Coming in now from left to right in a moment for another chance to see the top sights of these two airplanes. It was in Oman that the Strikemaster really won its combat spurs. They were engaged very heavily in the Dhofar rebellion, during which communist-backed rebel forces were trying to take over a province of Oman called Dhofar from the control of the Sultanate. Then, as now, Oman was heavily supported by Britain, and the Battle of Mirbat in July 1972 proved to be a key engagement. Strikemasters of the then Sultan of Oman's Air Force took part in that, providing close air support with strafing runs with the gun and light rockets. Forces they were assisting, including members of our own SAS, the Special Air Service, and 3 Omani Strikemasters were shot down during those actions.
And very much that cemented a lifelong relationship between the Sultan of Oman and of course the British government, but in particular the Special Forces, whose connection has lived on a long, long time. And it has brought many benefits for both parties, many of which we'll never know.
There were 2 batches of Strikemasters supplied to the Sultan of Oman's Air Force. This one is from the second, built in 1986, the aircraft leading this formation pair. Since 2005 it's been on the British Civil Register, and it's operated by North Wales Military Aviation Services, based at Harton Airport near Chester. A company that offers jet conversion training and holds significant Strikemaster spare stocks, quite a lot of which they acquired from the Omanis themselves. The jet Provost that we see meanwhile is based at Coventry Airport in Warwickshire and is being provided very kindly to the Strikemaster display team this year by its owner Neeraj Kapoor. In towards us on the B axis, that's what we call the axis at 90 degrees on to the main A axis, virtually parallel with the runway in the latter case, for a break.
Of course, as a result of that incredible success in the export market of the Mark V then, that we ended up with this Omani aircraft because it was a result of the arms embargo on the Sudanese contract that eventually the various parts that were left languishing in the British aerospace factories put together this one now known as 425 affectionately by people in the market, and particularly its owner. So it was almost by default this came into existence, and as you mentioned, I think one of the very latest deliveries of the Strikemaster.
In towards us for the first of, or in towards each other I should say, for the first of their opposition manoeuvres in this display. Strikemaster from the left, jet Provost from the right. Very smartly there at display Scampton as they turn into the carousel. Provost in this display was delivered to the RAF in 1970, and it spent a great deal of its time with number 6 Flying Training School at RAF Finningley, today's Doncaster Sheffield Airport, involved in training navigators. It was the Jet Provost display aircraft in 1990, and it still wears that livery today. Normally, Jet Provosts at that time, as with the one owned by Jeff Bell in the static park here, were simply red and white, but this one was given blue upper surfaces as well. Another aeroplane that was a hugely familiar sight in Lincolnshire skies, with so many of them being stationed at the RAF College Cranwell during the type's heyday. That heyday came to an end in 1993 when the last were retired by the RAF in favour of the Shorts Tucano, and you can see a pair of Tucanos here from number 72 Reserve Squadron at Linton-on-Ouse in the static park, the unit this year celebrating its centenary. But the JP has proved very popular on the civilian market indeed as a relatively affordable way of getting into ex-military jet flying. In once again towards us with the Strikemaster trailing smoke for a split.